we're lingering with something old, unseen, and endlessly steady. Gravity. It's the quiet pull that keeps you grounded, lifts the sea into tides, and draws stars into their slow, luminous gatherings. You don't often feel it, yet it shapes almost everything. The turning of planets, the rise and fall of your breath, the weight you carry in your bones, and even the gentle curve of your thoughts. Before we wander further into this patient force, I'm curious, where are you in the world right now, and what hour is it in your patch of the sky? It's a strange thing, isn't it? To speak of gravity while we're scattered across the planet, all of us anchored softly in place, and in a way anchored to each other. If these slow explorations help you settle, or if you're here to rest your mind after a long day, you're welcome to like the video, or quietly subscribe. It helps this little corner find others who might need a gentle pause too. Now, let's begin. You open your eyes to a bright room. You feel the sheets, hear a fan, reach for your phone, a text from a friend appears. You rise, make tea, and talk about plans. Then the alarm rings. You wake in your bed. The first scene felt solid, yet it was a dream. If a dream can match waking life, what can you be sure of now? This is the dream argument, made famous by Descartes. If you can't rule out dreaming, you can't be certain about the world. The target is absolute certainty. No chance of error, not everyday confidence. It forces a choice: accept less than strict certainty or limit what you claim to know. Some things survive this test. You can be sure you're having an experience now. Doubting that is itself an experience. Descartes made the point in I think, I am. You can also be certain of what appears to you: light, sound, sensation. This is sometimes called knowledge of appearances. Logic and simple math hold. Dream or not, all squares have four sides. 2 + 2 is 4. Dreams can mimic mistakes, but they can't make these rules false. So two anchors remain: your conscious experience and basic rules of thought. Still, this feels thin. You want to know if the stove is off or the bank account has funds. Here the problem shifts from logic to risk. In practice, we act without absolute proof. Surgeons and pilots use reliable checks, not perfection. Fallibilism holds that knowledge can allow for possible error if the grounds are strong. Some reject the argument outright. The Moran reply says, I know I have hands, so I must not be dreaming. It leans on common sense, though it doesn't give strict proof. Others use dream tests. Lucid dreamers read a line of text twice, try a light switch, or count their fingers. Waking life offers longer-term checks. Memories link over days, objects stay put, other people recall the same events. Dreams have weaker ties across time. Bayesian thinking frames it differently. Most of your life is spent awake, so the base chance you're dreaming at noon is low. Add cues, stable text, working devices, shared memories, and the odds drop further, not to certainty, but to practical reliability. If you demand the absolute bar, you cannot be certain you're not dreaming. The door stays open a crack, but you can be certain of your conscious state, of logic, and of math, and you can build high confidence in the rest through testing. The hinge of you says some beliefs having a body, an external world, working senses, are fixed starting points. You don't prove them, you rely on them to prove other things. Doubting them too far ends inquiry itself. The safety test in epistemology asks if you'd hold the same belief in nearby situations without it being false. If you dream vividly, I'm awake, may fail. But it seems there's a white cup here, is safe. Dream or not, it would still seem that way. Skills also survive dreams. Knowing how to ride a bike isn't lost in sleep. Dreams can mimic or block acts, but they don't erase training. A VR headset shows the shape of the problem. You can know the rules of the game you're in and what moves you've made, even if you can't be sure you're not in VR. Waking life works similarly. You act within the frame, using stable cues to keep your place. Judges and doctors don't have strict certainty. They work toward decisions that match reality with high odds, using records and double checks. They accept small error as risk, not ruin. Even moral claims shift. You can't be sure another's pain is real, but you can be sure you feel care or fear, and that can guide action. It helps to separate seems from as. You can be certain of how things seem, and treat the is side as strong where your checks hold over time. A simple routine can strengthen confidence. Reread text, check a note from yesterday, verify calls on your phone, press on a solid surface. Each link in the chain builds trust in wakefulness. Rich, stable dreams are rare. Most break under pressure. The story jumps, people change, words drift. The dreamed out can't touch the fact of experience, the rules of thought, or your awareness of your own feelings. It can unsettle claims about objects, places, or accounts. You can keep those in a high confidence, not absolute box. You keep living, testing when it matters, adjusting confidence as cues change, and letting a small island of certainty anchor the wider sea you navigate. You open your eyes, and the world is there. You look at the sky, and by looking, you are part of the scene. The light you see bounces off air, dust and clouds, then into your eyes. You are not outside of this process. You are inside it. The act of observing does not place you above the universe. It places you deeper within it. That is the observer's dilemma. You want to watch without affecting, but watching changes what you are and where you stand in the picture. In physics, the observer effect says that measuring a system changes it. The most famous example is from quantum mechanics, where a particle exists in a range of possible states until it is measured. The measurement forces it into one outcome. The experiment is not something that happens to the particle, it is something that happens to both the particle and the observer. Your choice of what to measure and how to measure it becomes part of the story. This is easy to see in a lab, but the same principle holds outside. Think about wildlife research. A hidden camera records animals that act as if no one is watching. But if a human steps into the clearing, the animals change their behavior. They move, hide, or become still. The scene is different because the observer is now part of it. Your place in the clearing changes what the clearing is. Even in human life, the moment you watch, you enter the frame. In a meeting, if you stop speaking and start taking notes, people notice. They shift in their chairs. They choose words differently. The group you wanted to observe without influencing is now reacting to you. You did not just record the meeting, you altered it by being there in a particular way. Social media turns this into a daily experience. You see someone post a photo. The photo is not just a slice of life. It is a life shaped by knowing it will be seen. The smile, the angle, the light are chosen with an observer in mind. You as the viewer help define the event. Even if you were not in the room, the expectation of observation bends reality toward it. There is also the change in you. To observe is to take in new information. That information changes what you know, and what you know changes what you are capable of. A scientist who looks through a telescope and sees a galaxy where none was expected cannot return to the state before that sight. The observation shifts their place in the intellectual landscape. They now occupy a universe with that galaxy in it, and their future actions will unfold in that version of reality. In personal life, noticing changes your relationship to what you notice. A person can live next to the same tree for years without really seeing it. One morning, they notice the bark's texture and the way the light catches it. That act of attention changes the tree's role in their life. It becomes part of their daily map. It draws the eye when they pass. The observer and the observed have a new link, and the person's place in their own neighborhood has shifted. The brain is not a passive recorder. It shapes what it sees based on what it expects. Perception is an active loop. Sensory input comes in. The brain makes predictions, and the two meet to form your sense of the world. When you look at something, your nervous system changes state to receive it. Your pupils adjust, your focus shifts, neurons fire in patterns unique to that stimulus. You do not remain untouched. You leave the act of looking as a slightly different person than the one who began it. This has a clear form in experiments on attention. When people are told to watch for a certain feature in a video, say, players in white shirts, they often miss other events, even something as large as a person in a costume walking through the scene. The instruction to observe in a specific way changes what you can see. You have altered your position in the field of possible perceptions. The world is now filtered through the choice you made as an observer. In history, exploration offers countless examples. An expedition maps an unknown river. The moment the map exists, traders, settlers, or governments act on it. The observer's role changes the river's place in human affairs, and the river changes the observer's place in the world's network of connections. The map is not neutral, it is an intervention. Photography makes this tension clear. Early street photographers tried to capture candid life. But even when unnoticed, the presence of a lens shapes the scene. People adjust without realizing. Space is given up to make way for the one holding the camera. The photographer's path through the city changes the pattern of what is possible there, even for those not in the shot. On a personal scale, think about watching yourself. The moment you notice your own mood, your posture, or the tone of your voice, you shift. Self-awareness can improve choices, but it also means you are no longer the exact self you were before noticing. The act of observing yourself changes how you speak, move, and respond. You cannot be the same person who acted without that self-consciousness. The dilemma deepens when you realize you cannot stop observing. Even when you think you are only living, you are taking in sights, sounds, and sensations. Your brain is storing patterns, adjusting behavior, predicting outcomes. You are shaping your own place in the network of events, simply by existing as an organism that perceives. In group settings, awareness of being observed changes not just at individuals but systems. In workplaces, this is called the Hawthorne effect. Productivity shifts when people know they are being studied. The study is no longer neutral, it is part of the environment it measures. Observers and observed form a feedback loop that makes the original baseline impossible to recover. Astronomy offers a profound version. When we look deep into space, we see light that has traveled for billions of years. The photons strike our detectors, and in doing so, they stop their journey. The information they carry collapses into a record here. The act of observation ends one story and begins another. We are not just finding out what the universe is, we are taking a role in what it becomes. In physics labs, choices about what to measure can exclude other possibilities forever. In the double-slit experiment, deciding to measure which path a photon takes erases the interference pattern. The observer's decision shapes the outcome in a way that cannot be undone. The universe we inhabit after the observation is not the same as the one before it. On a smaller scale, personal relationships change with attention. When you focus on a friend's strength, you interact with them in ways that encourage it. When you focus on their faults, your behavior shifts in ways that reinforce those instead. Your observation changes their reality and your place in it. You are not an idle witness, you are a participant who shapes the field you share. Even silence carries the effect. If you watch someone in quiet attention, they may speak more or less than they would otherwise. They may fill the space or retreat. Your presence changes their options, which in turn changes what you see. You are shaping the very material you hope to study untouched. The dilemma is not about whether we should observe. Observation is constant and unavoidable. It is about understanding that there is no clean separation between the observer and the observed. Each act of looking, listening, or measuring is also an act of joining. In every observation, the universe is not a stage on which you sit in the dark and watch. You are on the stage, under the lights, part of the cast, and each line you speak or step you take changes the play for everyone, including you. It starts when you notice yourself. You hear your own voice in your head. You watch your breath. You feel your shoulders rise. You see the way you speak to a friend. You catch a habit in the act. In that moment, the thing you notice is no longer the same. The breath changes, the voice shifts, the habit pauses. You show up as a watcher, and the watched thing shifts. But the moment you become aware, the old self slips out of frame. A new self takes the stage. Think about a camera in a room. People chat in a loose way, bring out the camera, and the talk changes. Faces turn, posture tightens, jokes land with less ease. The device only watched, yet the act of watching changed the scene. Attention works like that inside you. When your mind turns its beam on a thought or feeling, it doesn't stay still. You see this in the body. Try to walk smoothly while you think about each footstep. Your gait turns stiff. You've moved from automatic to conscious control. Neuroscience calls this shifting from the basal ganglia to the prefrontal cortex. Helpful in learning, but it proves the point. The self that walks while watched is not the same one that walks freely. Now look at the mood. You wake with a blue fog, you name it. Sadness. Naming gives you space. You take a breath, call a friend, walk outside. The act of naming changed the state. This is metacognition, thinking about thinking. Once a thought becomes an object, you can act on it. The watcher self is not the same as the one that felt swallowed 5 minutes ago. A coder knows this. You ship a feature, users hit a bug, you turn on debug mode, logs print each step. Once you watch, the state changes. You never see the code the same way. Life works like that. Awareness is your debug mode. Turn it on, and you change the run. A runner watches a video of her stride before she runs on feel. After she sees a knee cave, she cues glute and shifts cadence. Her brain lays down new motor plans. The runner before and after the tape are not the same athlete. This shows up in love and work. A couple sits with a therapist. The therapist names a pattern, pursue and withdraw. In the next fight, both notice the old steps. The pursuer holds back. The withdraw stays. Their bond changes shape. The old pair no longer exists. A manager gets a 360 review. She learns her quiet face reads as cold. She thought it read as calm. She changes how she listens, adds small signals of warmth. Trust grows. She didn't just gain a skill. She became a different presence. Look at social media. Before filming, your day moves in flow. Once you record, you tilt the plate, adjust your tone. You are both actor and director. The self that lives while watched by a lens is shaped by the lens. Mindfulness shows the same truth. You sit, watch the breath. Thoughts rise. You label them. Planning, memory, fear. The act of noting loosens them. The act that grabs each thought fades. Some call this moving from the narrative self to the experiential self. When you stand up, you're not quite the same as when you sat down. Schemas make this visible. A student sees herself as bad at math. A tutor shows her she rushes the last step. She slows down, gets more answers right. The schema cracks. She is no longer the same learner. Self-watch can turn harsh. Constant scan mode makes every move feel wrong. Performance falls. Musicians call it choking. Coaches say trust the reps. You need moments without the watcher on high alert. Too little awareness, you sleepwalk. Too much, you freeze. Consider food tracking. A person weighs rice, logs oil, learns where fat hides. Intake and taste shift. Hunger cues reset. The eater after a month of tracking is not the eater from before. Parents see it. A child builds with blocks. A parent says, "Show me your tower." The child turns to the lens. Play shifts from open build to perform build. The act of being watched changes the act itself. Writers live it. A raw first draft flows, then you read it aloud, and a reader enters your head. The rewrite is for that reader. The self who wrote the draft is gone. Science offers a parallel in the observer effect. When you measure, you touch. When you touch, you change. Awareness is your instrument. It changes what it observes. Therapy uses this. In CBT, you track thoughts and label distortions. Logging weakens old patterns. Over time, synapses rewire. The person who can spot a distortion is not the one who swallowed it whole. Faith works the same way. A person kneels to pray. They name pride or guilt. Naming changes their next act. The actor prayer is not the actor from 10 minutes before. Groups shift with shared awareness. A team learns the bystander effect. The next time one says, "I'm the one," the culture changes. the old norm dies. Identity theory calls it self-discrepancy, actual, ideal, and ought selves. See the gap, feel discomfort, face it with care, and you close or reframe it. Either way, you've changed. Memory twists it further. Recall a moment, and you rewrite it. Each act of remembering produces a new file. The me that lives on it belongs to the new version. Art works this way. A painter decides to see the red. The blue recedes. Strokes follow the new vision. Your life follows what you choose to see. You can feel it in a drill. Sit, feet on floor. Count 5 breaths. Look at your hands closely. Stand and walk to a door with the same attention. Your gait changes. The self who sat is not the self who walks. Career changes show it. A nurse moves into triage. She now scans patients, sets priorities, spots bias, builds checklists. She isn't just the same nurse with a new job. She's a different mind. Even humor shows it. You tell a joke. People see you as the funny one. You sharpen timing. Study beats. You're no longer a loose wit. You're a craft comic. Awareness can also tighten you up. A child thinking I must be brave in a game may freeze. A coach says, notice your breath. Focus on one cue. The narrowed awareness frees them. Pilots do this with checklists, binding attention to the right place at the right time. Language matters. Words shape fog. Anxiety feels like a blur. Call it threat response, and you can act. Scan the body. Lengthen the exhale. Drop your shoulders. The state changes. The person who began in nameless heat is gone. Some avoid looking at themselves. If I don't think about it, it will pass. Sometimes it does, but growth stays random. Better to use awareness like a dial. Up to learn, down to perform. Stay curious, not harsh. End each day with 3 questions. What did I feel? What did I do? What will I try? Write them down. Over time, the act of noticing builds a guide inside you. That guide is you, but a new you, one you couldn't meet before you looked. It begins with the simple fact that you live inside reality and can never step outside it to check if it is real. You can test parts of it, measure them, compare them, but all the tools you use come from the same place you are testing. You cannot climb out of the frame to see the whole picture from the outside. You can only define reality from within reality, which means the proof you seek will always loop back to the place you started. Think of trying to measure a ruler with itself. You can hold it up and see that it lines up with its own marks. But that does not prove the marks are correct by some outside standard. It only proves the ruler is consistent with itself. The same goes for defining reality. Any concept you use, any law you cite, is part of the very reality you are trying to define. You check it against itself, and the answer will always fit the same system it came from. Philosophy calls this a self-referential problem. It shows up in logic, math, and language. The liar paradox is a small example. This sentence is false. If it is true, it is false. And if it is false, it is true. The statement tries to evaluate itself from inside itself. When we ask if reality is real, we are doing the same thing. The only evidence we can gather is made of the very stuff in question. Imagine a person born in a perfect simulation. Everything they see, hear, and touch comes from the system running the simulation. They study physics, build telescopes, explore their universe. Every measurement matches the rules of the simulation. They could live their whole life without knowing if there is anything beyond it. Even if they suspect, they would have no tool that is not itself simulated. This is the problem of the reality loop. We are in the same position. If there is an outside to our reality, any clue we find is still processed by the inside. The brain adds another layer. All perception is mediated. Light hits the eye, signals pass to the brain, and the brain builds a model of the world. You do not see the photons. You see the brain's interpretation of them. The same is true for sound, touch, taste, and smell. Your reality is already a constructed image in the mind. If the brain's model is the only interface you have, you cannot compare it to an unfiltered version. The loop closes before you even start asking the question. Science thrives within the loop. It maps patterns, makes predictions, builds machines that work. A GPS satellite needs to account for relativity to be accurate, and when we do, the maps line up. That tells us the model is effective. But effectiveness is not the same as proof of ultimate reality. A video game character could discover that gravity in their world is always the same in every test. They could make a science of it and build devices that exploit it. That would not prove the game's world is real. In any deeper sense, it would prove the rules are consistent inside that frame. You can see a smaller form of the loop in dreams. Inside a dream, things feel real until you wake up. You can run, taste, and argue. You can reason about the dream's physics. The logic you use works within the dream, but that logic has no reach beyond it. When you wake, you see the dream's reality was a subset of a larger one. In waking life, you have no larger state to wake into that. You can confirm. You could already be in the equivalent of the dream, only without an alarm clock to prove it. Language makes the loop even tighter. Every definition is built with other words, which are themselves defined by still more words. A dictionary is a web of cross-references. There is no single word that sits outside the system to anchor it. Reality works the same way for knowledge. Every fact is backed by other facts, and all exist inside the same frame. There is no external dictionary to check. Some philosophers try to break the loop by finding something undeniable. Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am." His point was that doubting your own existence still requires someone to do the doubting. That might give certainty about the I, but it still leaves the rest of reality in the loop. You can be sure you exist in some form, but not of the nature of the place you exist in. Others suggest that coherence is enough. If a system explains all observations without contradiction, we can treat it as real. This is a pragmatic move. Pilots trusted instruments because they keep planes in the air, not because they can prove the laws of physics exist outside perception. But coherence is still internal proof. It works because we accept the rules of logic and experience, both parts of the same frame we are testing. Think about a mirror maze. Every reflection is consistent with the others. Angles line up, distances match. You can navigate by those reflections. But all the images come from within the same hall of mirrors. You cannot tell from the inside how the building looks from outside, or if there even is an outside. That is how reality looks when you try to define it from within itself. The loop also appears in mathematics. Gödel's incompleteness theorems show that any formal system complex enough to include arithmetic will contain true statements that cannot be proved within the system. This means that no system can be both complete and self-verifying. To prove everything, you would need a step outside. But if reality is the only system we have, there is no outside step available. The simulation argument uses the loop as part of its logic. If we ever create simulations indistinguishable from our reality, the odds suggest we might already be in one. But even if that were true, the outside running it would still have its own reality loop. The question just moves up a level. You still cannot step outside all of it. You can test your own reaction to the loop with a thought exercise. Suppose someone hands you a flawless proof that you are in a simulation. The proof uses mathematics, physics, and direct sensory evidence. You believe it, but the proof itself is part of the simulation. The rules you trust, the logic you follow, and the senses you use all come from inside. Even your belief is part of the system. You have learned something about the structure, but you still have no view from the outside. The same holds for religious or metaphysical claims. If someone says reality is the creation of a higher being, the claim is still processed by your mind, using the categories you already have. The idea of a creator, the meaning of existence, the notion of cause, all of them are formed within the same reality you are questioning. Whether true or false, the claim cannot escape the loop it lives in. Some turn to direct experience to break the loop. Practices like meditation or psychedelics can change the sense of what is real. People report that the world feels less solid, or that the self dissolves, but these are still experiences. They happen inside consciousness, which is part of the frame. The content of the experience may suggest there is more to reality but the experience itself remains within it. Even skepticism depends on the loop. To doubt reality, you must rely on reasoning and evidence, both products of the same reality you doubt. It is like pulling on a rope to see if the rope exists. You can feel tension or slack, but you are still holding the rope. In everyday life, the loop does not cause trouble. You act as if the world is real, because it behaves consistently. You avoid fire, you eat when hungry, you move when threatened. The rules hold, so you use them. The loop only becomes visible when you step back and try to anchor reality itself to something outside it. That anchor never appears. The closest you can come is to notice the loop itself. You can see that any definition, proof or explanation of reality is made of the same material as reality. You can see that the question, "Is this real?" has no place to land outside the system. And once you see that, you understand why the loop will never break, because there is nowhere outside to pull from. A child asks, "Why is the sky blue?" You explain about sunlight scattering in the atmosphere. They nod, then ask, "Why does light scatter?" You talk about particles and wavelengths. They ask, "Why do particles do that?" You give an answer about physics, and they ask, "Why does physics work that way?" The chain stretches on. Each answer ends with another question that starts with why. The search feels like it should stop somewhere. But every time you think you have reached the end, the next link appears. The human mind looks for reasons. When something happens, we want a cause, a rule, or a purpose to explain it. This drive helps us survive. If you know why the fruit on one tree makes you sick, and the fruit on another does not, you can avoid danger. If you know why the wind shifts before a storm, you can take shelter. In this sense, why is a survival tool. But once survival is not the main task, the tool keeps working anyway. It turns inward, asking about the structure of the world and the meaning of life. You can see the chain in science. Ask why an apple falls to the ground, and you get gravity. Ask why gravity works, and you get curved spacetime. Ask why spacetime curves, and you get mass and energy, telling it how to bend. Ask why mass and energy exist, and you step into cosmology, quantum fields, and the origins of the universe. At no point does the final why close the loop. The answer always rests on another question. Philosophy lives inside the chain. You might ask why people should act morally. One answer is to promote well-being. Why promote well-being? Because it reduces suffering. Why reduce suffering? Because suffering is bad. Why is suffering bad? Because it feels unpleasant. Why does unpleasantness matter? The chain keeps going until the person either accepts a statement as self-evident or admits they cannot answer further. Even when you reach something that feels like a foundation, you can still ask why that foundation holds. Children are the purest form of the chain because they do not stop themselves. Adults often pause when the next why feels too large or abstract. The child will keep going, forcing you to notice where your own answers run out. Sometimes the chain ends in "that's just how it is," which is less an answer and more a marker for our limits. It does not close the chain, it only shows where we stop following it. The chain can run in practical matters too. If a company decides to change its logo, you can ask why. They might say it's to modernize their image. Why modernize? To attract new customers. Why attract new customers? To grow revenue. Why grow revenue? To stay competitive. Why stay competitive? To survive in the market. Why survive? Because the people in it want to keep their jobs. Each layer uncovers a deeper driver. But even here, there is no final why that stops the process. Some fields try to make the chain more efficient. The 5 whys method in root cause analysis is a tool for finding the source of a problem. You ask why 5 times to move from surface symptoms to deeper causes. A machine stops. Why? A fuse blew. Why? The circuit overloaded. Why? The bearing seized. Why? Lubrication was not applied. Why? The maintenance schedule was not followed. The point is to fix the last cause in the chain. Yet even this process stops by choice, not because there is no deeper why. The maintenance schedule might not have been followed because of budget cuts, which happened because of market shifts, which happened because of broader economic forces, and so on. In science and engineering, Stopping points are often chosen based on usefulness. If knowing the molecular structure of a material answers your design question, you do not keep asking why atoms bond the way they do. But usefulness is not the same as completeness. The unanswered why still exists. It just sits beyond the scope of your current work. In metaphysics, the chain can become a trap. Ask why the universe exists, and you might get an answer like, because it came from the Big Bang. Ask why the Big Bang happened, and you get theories about quantum fluctuations or multiverses. Ask why those exist, and you end up with either an infinite regress and a necessary being, or the idea of a brute fact, something that just is, without further reason. Each of these is a way to stop the chain, but each can be questioned again. The chain also appears in personal life. Ask why you want a certain job, and you might say it's for the salary. Why the salary? To buy a home. Why the home? For security. Why security? To feel safe. Why feel safe? Why feel safe? Because without safety you feel fear. Why avoid fear? Because it is unpleasant. At some point you reach core drives. Comfort, connection, meaning, survival. But even those can be questioned. Why should survival matter? Why should comfort matter? These questions can feel unsettling, because they pull at the roots of our choices. Sometimes the chain is circular. You ask why you rest on weekends, and you say it's to have energy for work. You ask why you work, and you say it's to earn money to live and rest. The loop closes, but it does not remove the question. It only shows that some of our reasons feed each other. The why chain can expose these loops, but the loops themselves may be stable enough to live in. The chain's endlessness can be both a strength and a problem. It pushes inquiry forward. Without it, science, philosophy, and art would stall. But it can also lead to paralysis when no answer feels final. People can get stuck chasing the ultimate why, in a way that keeps them from acting. You can see this in debates that circle for years without resolution. Not because the subject is unimportant, but because the chain of questions has no bottom. Some people deal with the chain by choosing an axiom, a starting point they will not question further. In mathematics, axioms are accepted as given. In impersonal life, someone might decide that happiness, love, or truth is the thing they value without needing to explain why beyond that. This move does not end the chain in an objective sense. It simply marks a point where the person is willing to stop asking. The chain can also be shortened by changing the question. Instead of why is this true, you can ask how does this work, or what can I do with this? These shift from reasons to mechanisms or actions. The change does not remove the underlying why, but it sets it aside for a time. In some cases, this is enough to make progress without resolving the deeper layers. There is a comfort in recognizing the pattern. When you notice that every answer contains the seed of the next why, you see that the endlessness is not a flaw in your thinking. It is the shape of inquiry itself. Every explanation rests on another explanation, and the ground always moves when you try to stand on it. The chain is not something to solve, it is something to navigate. And so the child keeps asking, the scientist keeps probing, the philosopher keeps debating, and the person lying awake at night keeps turning the question over. Each answer is a link, and each link has another behind it. You follow as far as you can, stop where you must, and know that the chain continues past your stopping point, stretching into the dark where the next why waits. It starts when pain shows up. Your chest tightens, your jaw clenches. A thought says, "Get me out." The urge to get out feels like help. It gives you a plan. Scroll, work, eat, drink, numb out, run from what hurts. The plan seems wise at first, yet the more you try to escape, the more the urge owns you. Pain is one thing. Fighting the pain is another. The fight becomes its own kind of pain. Traditions describe this as two arrows. The first is the hit you cannot stop, loss, grief, shame, fear. The second is resistance. You tense, brace, tell yourself you can't feel this. That second arrow is optional, but we fire it by habit. We think escape will save us. The escape becomes the trap. In psychology, this is experiential avoidance, trying to control thoughts and feelings with force. Numbing cuts the peak, distraction moves the mind, but the long-term cost grows. The brain learns normal states are threats. Hypervigilance takes hold. The body stays on alert. The urge to escape spreads. Anxiety shows it clearly. Panic on a train makes you get off. Relief teaches the brain. Trains are danger. Escape is safety. You avoid trains, then buses, then crowds. The fear shrinks your map. The cure becomes the cause. The suffering now comes from the rule your nervous system learned, not the train. Chronic pain follows the same loop. Sharp knee pain leads you to stop moving. The pain eases but muscles weaken. Joints stiffen, and small moves hurt more. You avoid more movement. Your world shrinks to a couch and a chair. Pain rehab calls this fear avoidance. The fix is graded exposure. Small safe moves that teach motion is not a threat. Relief from escape flees the cycle. Relief from approach breaks it. The limbic system plays its part. When you flee, dopamine spikes. That spike cements the path. This worked. This negative reinforcement makes you repeat the escape. Soon you chase the relief more than you flee the pain. The chase becomes stress. You plan the next exit. You suffer from escaping. Workaholism follows that arc. You feel not good enough, so you work late. Praise and bonuses land. Praise becomes a drug. You fear slow days. You check mail at night, and at dawn, burnout comes. Cortisol stays high. Allostatic load rises. The system wears down. The job isn't the only cause. The escape turned into a grind that feeds the pain. Substances make the loop stark. You drink to quiet grief. The grief remains with a hangover on top. Tolerance builds. Now you drink to escape both grief and withdrawal. The narrow window where you feel okay shrinks. You pace your day around it. The escape is the cage. Grief itself doesn't harm. The love inside you needs somewhere to go. Tears a walk, a letter you never send help. The wave move, forbid the wave and you harden. You avoid songs, places and memories. The world loses color. That numbness feels safe, then becomes a new pain. Social media can be an escape valve. You feel empty, scroll, get novelty hits. They lower the urge briefly. After you feel flat, you need more hits for the same effect. Reward prediction error. The gap between expectation and result grows. The loop deepens. Time, sleep and focus drain away. The loss of focus feeds more scrolling. The break becomes the drain. The mind uses safety behaviors. You rehearse a talk not to learn it, but to avoid shame. You overcheck a lock, not for safety, but to quiet fear. The relief tells the brain the fear was valid. The brain makes more fear. The loop tightens. The white bear effect adds heat. Try not to think of one, and it fills the mind. Try not to feel sad, and sadness is tagged as a threat. You feel sad and afraid of sad. The stack grows. Another trap, escaping the urge to escape. You scold yourself for checking the stove. Shame piles on fear. You're still in the same frame, trying to fix feelings with force. The frame is the problem, not just the acts inside it. So what helps? First, see the control agenda for what it is. A plan to make inner weather obey orders. Inner weather doesn't obey. Thoughts, feelings, urges arise. You can steer your actions, widen your stance, and let sensations move through. You can choose what to do next with your hands and feet. Mindfulness builds this stance. Sit and watch the breath. A thought pops up, label it thinking, and return to the breath. You're not pushing the thought down or feeding it. You're seeing it pass. Over time, this builds to stress tolerance, the space between impulse and act. The urge to escape loses charge when you know you can hold it without breaking. Cognitive behavioral therapy targets loops with experiments. If you fear a mall, visit for 5 minutes with a friend. Track your heart rate and thoughts. See panic crest and fall without escape. The nervous system learns new rules. Inhibitory learning takes root. You learn fear can exist without danger. The brain rewires to expect a drop, not a crash. Acceptance work adds values. If you only try to feel better, you get trapped fighting feelings. If you aim to live better, feelings can ride in the back seat. Choose values, care, craft, truth, play, service, and act on them in small ways. Make a call, walk the dog, write a page, fix a hinge, hold a hand. Pain can ride as a guest in a life like that. The body is a big liver. When the sympathetic system spikes, breath rises and shortens. Drop it into the belly, lengthen the exhale, and the vagus nerve calms the heart. Shoulders loosen, the storm loses force. You didn't escape it. You stood in it. Name the pattern out loud. I want to escape this. Naming shifts you from fusion to choice. In ACT, this is diffusion. You step back enough to see the thought as ink on a page. You can carry the page while walking toward what you care about. The page still exists, but no longer blocks the path. Build graded exposure to states, not just places. Sit with an urge for 1 minute without acting. Next day 2. Teach your body urges pass like weather. Apply it to habits. Leave one plate unwashed. If you overclean, let one text sit. If you overplease. Small breaks from escape build strength like reps in a gym. Community helps. Pain grows in secret. Share with one person who listens without fixing. Co-regulation calms the system. Mirror neurons map the calm face across from you, and your inner world follows. You didn't flee your pain. You let someone help carry it. Art can carry pain without feeding it. Write about it. Draw its shape. Hum its sound. You give pain a form, and forms can be held. Sleep, food, and sun matter. Lack of sleep makes the amygdala fire fast. Low blood sugar sharpens thoughts. Too much screen light at night blunts melatonin. A tired brain sees more threat. A rested brain holds more load. So you need less escape, not from fighting harder, but from having more range. Ethics fit here too. When you harm, while escaping harm, you add weight. Lie to avoid an awkward talk, and the lie becomes new fear. Hide a bill, and the debt grows. The clean move costs more in the moment, but less over time. Design life to make escape less tempting. Hide apps, put the phone away after dinner, keep wine out of reach and water close. Add friction before escape, and remove friction before value-based acts. You're not winning with willpower, you're shaping the field. The aim isn't to erase pain, it's to stop adding the second arrow. See the urge to escape as a signal, not a law. Build a stance that says pain is here. I can make room for it, and still do the next right thing. The next thing may be small, it counts. Over time, the link between pain and escape loosens. The world opens a bit. The need to escape eases, not because life softened, but because you stopped feeding the fire the urge kept alive. It starts like this. You want something so badly it feels like oxygen. It can be a career, a relationship, a lifestyle, or even a place you imagine living. You think about it when you wake up and when you go to bed. Every action you take is shaped by that picture in your mind. You work late nights. You make sacrifices. You say no to other things because you believe the goal will be worth it. You tell yourself the discomfort is temporary. In those early days, the dream was pure. You imagine what it will feel like to reach it. You see yourself in a certain role, living a certain way, and you like that person. You assume the person you are now and the person you will become are the same at the core, just with better circumstances. This is where the trap begins, though you can't see it yet. The dream starts shaping you in ways you don't notice. The pursuit changes your habits. You learn new skills, but you also learn to tolerate different things. Maybe you get better at dealing with stress, but you also get more comfortable living in constant stress. You stop talking to people who don't understand your ambition. You narrow your world to what helps you reach the goal. At the moment, this feels smart. You tell yourself it's focus. What's happening is that you are becoming someone who might not care about the same things you did when you started. Imagine someone who dreams of becoming a famous musician. At the start, they play guitar for the joy of it. They picture themselves on stage, pouring emotion into a song. They think about connecting with people through music. That's the dream. But to get there, they need to network, brand themselves, keep up a public image, tour constantly, and negotiate contracts. They learn to manage a team. They learn to market. They spend more time on logistics than songwriting. By the time they get the big record deal, they are skilled at business, tired of constant travel, and surrounded by people they barely trust. They have become a different person from the one who sat in their bedroom strumming chords. The dream of playing for joy no longer fits who they are. The change isn't always negative. In some cases, the person you become is stronger, more capable, and more confident. But it's still different. The act of achieving reshapes you. You gain discipline, but you also lose parts of yourself that don't serve the pursuit. You may even lose the original feelings that made the dream worth chasing. When you finally arrive, you realize you no longer want it in the way you once did. You wanted it as the old you. The new you feels differently. This is the dilemma. Achieving a dream often means outgrowing it in the process. The timeline makes it almost unavoidable. The years it takes to get there are the same years you spend changing. You're not standing still while the dream stays fixed in place. Both you and the dream evolve, but rarely in sync. By the time you can hold it in your hands, the meaning has shifted. Consider the person who wants to be a doctor. As a teenager, they imagine saving lives and helping people every day. That image pushes them through years of study, exams, and debt. Along the way, they learn the medical system is full of bureaucracy. They see how insurance companies dictate treatment. They learn that hospital politics can limit patient care. By the time they are in a position to save lives, their daily work looks less like the image they carried and more like managing schedules, filing reports, and handling pressure from administrators. They are still helping people, but not in the romanticized way that fueled their effort in the beginning. Their younger self's dream and their current self's reality do not match. This isn't only about careers. Take relationships. Someone dreams of finding the perfect partner. They imagine deep conversations, mutual respect, and shared adventures. They date, compromise, and learn more about themselves. Over time, their priorities change. By the time they meet someone who fits their old idea of perfect, they no longer want that version of perfect. The qualities they once thought were essential now feel less important or even exhausting. They built themselves into someone who values different things. The old dream is irrelevant. Sometimes the change is subtle. You don't wake up one morning and realize you've stopped wanting the goal. Instead, you hit milestones and feel less excitement than you expected. The reward doesn't land the way it used to in your imagination. The version of yourself who dreamed of this would have been thrilled. The current version feels detached, maybe even empty. You start looking for the next thing without pausing to enjoy what you've achieved. The problem is not ambition itself. Ambition will always require growth, and growth changes who you are. The problem is assuming that the dream you start with will still be the right one when you're finished changing. We talk about staying true to your dream, as if the dream is permanent, but it's just a snapshot of what mattered to you at one point in time. If you cling to that snapshot without updating it, you risk working for something that no longer fits you. People rarely notice this while they're in the middle of the climb. The work keeps them busy. They are too focused on the next step to question whether the staircase still leads somewhere they want to go. It's only when they reach a plateau or the summit that they have the space to look around and ask if this is what they actually wanted. Sometimes the answer is yes, but often it's not. This can create a quiet crisis. From the outside it looks like success. You got what you wanted. People congratulate you. But inside, you feel a gap between what you expected and what you feel. The gap can lead to restlessness, boredom, or even resentment toward the very thing you worked so hard to get. That's why you see people walk away from careers or lifestyles others envy. They're not ungrateful. They're simply no longer the person who made that old promise to themselves. It's like training for years to run a marathon. At the start you imagine the finish line, the medal, the cheers. The months of training make you fitter, but they also make you see running differently. You learn you like shorter, faster races. Or you realize you enjoy trail running more than road races. By the time you cross the marathon finish line, you've already decided you won't run another one. The original dream got you moving, but it was never meant to be permanent. What makes this tricky is that we're told to stick with our dreams no matter what. Changing them is seen as giving up. In reality, it's often a sign of growth. The danger is in not noticing the shift soon enough. You can spend years building towards something that no longer fits, then feel trapped by your own investment. People stay in careers, relationships, or lifestyles, not because they still want them, but because they don't want to admit their dream has expired. The success dilemma is not a failure of planning or discipline. It's a natural result of long-term effort. Any goal that takes years will require you to become someone new. The question is whether you're checking in often enough to see if the new version of you still wants the same thing. If you don't, you risk winning a game you no longer want to play. Picture a person who has worked for years toward a single goal. It could be money, recognition, or the ideal home. They plan, they sacrifice, they move step by step, then one day they reach it. The account is full, their name is known, the house is built. At first there is a rush. Friends visit, the meals are better, the work days are short or gone. Yet, after some weeks or months, the days flatten, the view stays the same, the food tastes familiar. The person begins to notice an absence, not of things, but of drive. This is the death of desire. Desire depends on a gap between what you have and what you want. The gap pulls you forward. It makes the mind reach and the body act. Without the gap, there is no pull. If you can have what you want at any moment, the want does not form. The mind skips the longing stage and goes straight to having. At first that feels like freedom. You no longer struggle. Then you find that the same lack of struggle means a lack of movement. The days start to run together. Think about hunger. It builds when you have not eaten. The first bite tastes rich because it meets the hunger. If you are full all the time, food loses its charge. You can still eat, you can still say something tastes good, but the pleasure fades without the return of want. The same holds for other desires. Rest feels good after strain. Warmth feels good after cold. Without the contrast, the feeling is thin. Some people meet this when they inherit wealth or sell a company. They buy what they once saw as marks of success. The first week is a string of purchases. The second week slows. By the third month, shopping is routine. The rare has turned into the normal. The same happens in relationships. A long courtship fills with plans and hopes. Once the union is set and the daily life is fixed, the chase is gone. For some, the bond grows deeper. For others, the loss of pursuit dulls the link. This is not only about material goods. The same pattern shows in creative work. A writer might dream of winning a major award. The day it comes, they feel they have arrived. The next morning they face the blank page and find the spark dim. Without a new aim, the skill feels heavy. The same can happen to athletes after a championship. The months of training, the focus on the event, all point to one night. When it is done, the body rests but the mind drifts. They may take months to find a new source of push. Desire often renews itself by shifting. You reach one goal and set another. This is how most people avoid the full death of desire. The danger comes when you can meet every new want at once. If you can buy the next thing without delay, or meet the next person without effort, or reach the next place without planning, the cycle breaks. The wait, the saving, the small failures that make success sweet, all vanish. You can still choose, but the choice no longer feels urgent. Some thinkers have framed this as the hedonic treadmill. The term points to the way humans return to a baseline of mood, and no matter the rise or drop in their state, you adapt to gains. What once thrilled you becomes your flaw. If you keep running after the next gain, the treadmill moves but you stay in place. When you step off, when you have no higher to go, you may feel stillness not as peace but as lack. Consider a small version of this in everyday life. You discover a new song and play it often. At first it lifts your mood each time. After a week, the lift is smaller. After a month, the song is just one among many. You might even skip it when it comes on. The song did not change. You did. Your mind stored it, filed it, and now treats it as known. The edge of novelty is gone. Scale that up to every part of your life, and you can see how having all you want can turn the world bland. Some people try to guard against this by holding back. They do not buy the best they can afford. They leave some goals unmet on purpose. They may call this discipline or restraint. In truth, it is a way to keep desire alive. If you have the means to cross the gap, but choose to stay on one side, the want survives. You can look at the thing, think of it, and feel the pull. The same works with experiences. You could travel anywhere, but you save some trips for later. You could eat the rare fruit each day, but you wait for the right season. You stretch the distance between having and wanting. Others reset their aims in areas where instant access is not possible. You cannot buy skill in the craft. You cannot rush mastery in music or sport. You have to put in time, and time brings struggle. Even if you own the best tools, the act of learning sets limits that money or status cannot erase. This gives you a fresh gap to cross. It is why some wealthy people turn to art, extreme sports, or study. They seek a place where effort still matters. The death of desire also ties to identity. Much of how you see yourself comes from the things you want and the way you work for them. If you remove that, you face a blank. Who are you without the next goal? Some handle this by shifting to giving rather than getting. They mentor, teach, or build for others. The work for someone else's gain can restore the sense of push. You create a new gap, but now it is between another person's present and future. And a more private way to keep desire is through curiosity. Facts and ideas have no limit. You can know more about the stars, the deep sea, or the cells in your body. The act of learning never ends, so the gap is always there. Even if you can buy books or hire tutors at will, the time and thought needed to grasp a subject creates space for wanting. This form of desire is not about lack in your life, but about the mind's pull toward the unknown. There is a danger in thinking that you can control desire fully. It is part of how your mind works. You can feed it or starve it, but it shifts on its own. You may not notice when it starts to fade. It can slip out quietly while you are still busy. One day you wake and see that nothing calls to you. That is when the death of desire feels most clear. The world is not worse. You are not in pain, but there is no slope to climb. And without the slope there is no reason to climb. This can happen in small cycles. After a long week of work, you spend the weekend in rest. By Sunday night, you feel ready to go again. The gap is small, so the desire comes back fast. In the larger cycle, the gap can be gone for years if you do not tend to it. People in long careers sometimes hit this point in midlife. They have the role, the pay, the home, and the routines. They have reached what they once set out for. Now they have to choose whether to build a new gap or drift in place. Some try to spark desire with risk. They take on challenges that could fail in public view. The risk sharpens the want. If the thing matters and you could lose, your body and mind align toward it. This works, but it has a cost. You may face real loss. Others look for novelty instead. They seek new scenes, new foods, new faces. This can keep the mind alert, but novelty fades fast if you can reach it at any time. You can see the shape of the problem in children who grow up with constant access to toys, games, and trips. At first they seem lucky, but many lose an interest fast and move from one thing to the next without depth. They do not feel the long want for a rare gift, so they do not learn the pleasure of its arrival. As adults, they may have to learn that skill from scratch. The death of desire is not always sudden. It can be a slow drift. Each new game trims a little more from the gap. If you do not watch, you can wake to find that the drive you thought was part of you is gone. The same traits that made you seek and strive now lie idle. You may even remember the chase with more joy than the prize. That memory can be a clue. It can point you back toward the need for something ahead of you that you cannot reach yet. You eat the first bite of cake, and it is perfect. The second bite is good. By the fifth, the taste dulls. The sweetness that felt rich now feels heavy. You keep eating to chase the pleasure you felt at the start. But it does not return. This is the hedonist's problem. If pleasure is the purpose of life, why does too much of it take the edge off, until the thing that was once enjoyable turns flat or even unpleasant? Pleasure is tied to the brain's reward system. When something good happens, food, sex, warmth, laughter, dopamine is released. Dopamine is not the pleasure itself. It is the signal that says, pay attention, do this again. It works well when pleasures are rare and spaced out. The system evolved in a world where sweet fruit was seasonal, warmth by the fire came after cold, and rest followed effort. The scarcity kept the signal sharp. In a modern setting, scarcity is often gone. You can have sugar in every drink, entertainment on every screen, comfort at every step. The reward system still runs as if you had to work for these things. Each hit of dopamine pushes for repetition. If you repeat too soon, the system adapts. This is tolerance. The same stimulus produces a smaller effect. You need more to get the same signal, and the baseline for what feels good starts to climb. What was once pleasure becomes the new normal, and the absence of it feels like a loss. The adaptation is not a flaw. It is called hedonic adaptation, and it keeps you from being locked in one state forever. If a hot bath felt as good on the 100th minute as on the first, you might stay in it until your skin was raw. Adaptation lets you move on. But it also means that chasing a single pleasure without pause leads to diminishing returns. The more you press on the same lever, the less it gives back. Consider someone who loves wine. At first, a single glass at dinner is a highlight. Over time, that glass becomes 2, then 3. The taste that was once complex now feels routine. The drink is no longer about flavor. It is about avoiding the flatness that comes when it is missing. Pleasure has turned into maintenance. The same pattern appears with any indulgence. A new video game is exciting. You stay up late to play. By the third week, the game feels like work. You push on to unlock the next reward, but the fun is thin. Streaming shows, buying clothes, eating out, all can slide from enjoyment into habit. The brain starts to expect constant stimulation and loses sensitivity to it. There is also the contrast effect. Pleasure stands out when it follows effort or boredom. A cold drink is better after heat. Rest feels deeper after hard work. If every moment is filled with stimulation, there is no contrast to frame it. Pleasure needs valleys to make the peaks visible. Without them, the peaks flatten. Ancient writers noticed this before neuroscience existed. Epicurus, often mislabeled as a promoter of constant indulgence, actually warned against it. He argued that simple pleasures, enjoyed in moderation, produced the most lasting happiness. The goal was not to remove all restraint, but to avoid the trap where each new indulgence makes you need more. Modern psychology points to the same balance. Intermittent rewards keep the system sensitive, variety and pacing matter. Pleasure works best when it is part of a cycle with other states, effort, rest, anticipation, even mild discomfort. Breaks from pleasure are not punishments. They are what keep the system able to register joy. The hedonist's problem deepens when the pursuit of pleasure ignores the cost to health, relationships, or meaning. Overeating for taste can lead to illness that blunts all enjoyment. Constant entertainment can crowd out work or learning that would create deeper satisfaction later. Short-term pleasure can erode the very conditions that allow pleasure to exist. Take the example of a beach holiday. The first days feel freeing. By the end of the second week, the same sun and sand may feel dull, without variety or purpose. Even the most idyllic scene loses its spark. You might start seeking more intense stimuli, more food, more drink, more thrill, to compensate. This accelerates adaptation. Neuroscience explains why the high cannot be sustained. Dopamine works in cycles. The spike comes with the promise of reward, not its constant presence. Continuous exposure to a stimulus keeps dopamine at a lower level, and the brain reduces receptor sensitivity to protect itself from overload. The result is that you feel less from the same act, and you may start to feel little without it. This is where overindulgence can turn into craving. Craving is not the same as liking. You can want something even when you no longer enjoy it. The system that drives you to seek pleasure can keep firing after the pleasure itself has faded. This is one reason addictions can feel hollow. People keep using not because the experience is still good, but because the drive to repeat it has become its own force. Physical pleasures are not the only ones that follow this curve. Social approval can work the same way. A compliment feels great. A steady stream of praise can dull its impact. Soon you may feel anxious without it, chasing approval not to feel joy, but to avoid the discomfort of its absence. The problem is not pleasure itself. Pleasure signals that something supports survival or well-being. The issue is the mismatch between a brain built for scarcity and a world of constant supply. In this world, the same instincts that once kept you alive can push you into cycles that wear down their own rewards. A different pattern emerges when pleasure is spaced out and balanced with effort. A runner might dislike the strain of training, but find deep pleasure in the calm after. A cook may spend hours preparing a meal and enjoy it more because of the work invested. The pleasure is tied to a process, not just a hit. This process can stretch the value of the reward and slow adaptation. The hedonist's problem is also shaped by attention. Mindless consumption speeds adaptation. When you eat without tasting, watch without noticing, or buy without thought, the experience passes shallowly. Mindful attention, fully engaging with the taste, sound, or sight, can deepen and prolong pleasure without increasing quantity. Even variety has limits. Switching from one intense pleasure to another can still overload the system if the pace is too fast. Recovery time matters, just as muscles need rest to grow. The brain's reward pathways need space to reset. You can see this in small experiments. Spend a week without a favorite treat, then have it again. The first taste feels sharper than it has in months. Or skip a regular show for a few weeks and notice how much more you enjoy it when you return. The gap restores sensitivity. There is also the matter of meaning. Pleasure on its own is brief. Pleasure connected to purpose can last longer. A toast at a wedding may feel richer than the same drink on an ordinary night. The context adds depth. The brain still processes the sensory reward, but it is layered with social and emotional value. This combination resists adaptation and better than sensation alone. Overindulgence strips away both contrast and meaning. When you fill every gap with stimulation, you lose the emptiness that makes fullness satisfying. When you repeat the same act too often, you strip it of its frame. Without restraint, the pursuit of pleasure eats itself, leaving the seeker with more craving and less joy. The paradox is that the shortest path to constant pleasure leads to losing it, while the slower path, spacing it, mixing it with other states, keeps it alive. You shed skin cells each day. Your gut lining renews. Your blood replaces itself. Bones remodel. The body is a living rebuild. Yet you sign your name. Answer to the same number. Remember the classroom where you learned long division. You feel like one person moving through time. This is the ship of self. If every plank on a ship gets replaced at sea, is it still the same ship? If every cell in your body turns over, are you still the same person? The body sends mixed signals. Some parts turn over fast. Gut, skin, blood. Others change slowly. Bone refreshes in cycles. The heart adds cells at a low rate. The lens in your eye keeps cells for life. Neurons in the cortex and hippocampus mostly stay, though their connections change. Proteins within cells degrade and rebuild. Even if a neuron persists, its parts do not. Life continues through change. This points to a simple idea. Identity may rest on keeping the same pattern, not the same stuff. A whirlpool remains a whirlpool as new water flows. Your body might be stable because it preserves structure, not atoms. Daily life shows how this works. A friend from school sees you after 10 years. Your face has aged, your cells have cycled, but they know you from gait, voice, posture, and a few lines on your face. You know them too. You both anchor identity in patterns that outlast turnover. Memory carries weight here. You recall your 8th birthday cake, the first tune you learned on guitar. Memory is not fixed, each recall edits it, reconsolidation. Yet it still links today's you to past events in ways others can check through photos, stories, places. People often say, your neurons are the same, so you are the same. But neurons change wiring. Synapses strengthen or weaken. Proteins within synapses swap out. Neurotransmitter levels shift with sleep, food, stress, time. Even where cells last, parts and links change. Continuity comes from updating the pattern, not freezing it. Consider a thought experiment. One clinic replaces each neuron with a matched device, one by one, over a year while you stay awake. Another scans you, builds a copy on Mars, and destroys the original. In both, your body is replaced. The gradual swap feels safer. The link stays unbroken. The instant copy feels like a break. This shows how much we value continuity, not raw material. Law agrees. You sign a contract at 20, you're bound at 40, even with fresh cells. If you wrong someone, you still owe repair. The law treats you as the same agent because there's a reliable chain tying decisions and records. Identity is partly public. Others hold it by tracking, naming, and trusting you to show up. Some cases stress the link. A stroke changes mood and judgment. Family says they're not the same. We tend to say they're still the same person in rights and duties, even if character shifts. Identity has degrees and layers. Organ transplants test another piece. A new heart doesn't make you the donor. Bone marrow transplants can change the DNA in your blood, even your blood type, yet friends still know you. Genetics matters for traits, but isn't our sole measure of self. Pregnancy can leave fetal cells in a mother for years. She remains herself. Your microbiome shifts with diet and travel. It influences mood and metabolism. It's not you strictly, but part of the system shaping each day. The self is a network of human and non-human cells, changing parts and stable patterns. Software gives a good analogy. A program runs on different machines, bytes swap as processes start and end. The program stays the same. If its code and data relationships hold, you still call it the same app. If it opens your files and follows the same rules after a patch, your mind might be like that. An ongoing process on changing hardware, tolerating updates while keeping a recognizable role. We also carry a story narrative identity. I'm the one who moved 3 times before age 10. I'm the one who learned late to trust my voice. The story filters events and shapes choices. It can be wrong or narrow, but it ties scenes together. It changes as you learn and as others reflect you back. The link can be sharp after loss or slow in quiet years. Social identity holds you steady. People who love you reinforce who you are through greetings, expectations, forgiveness. Teams rely on your skills. A child runs into your arms. These ties give you a place to stand when your inner sense wobbles during illness or stress. Identity is not only inside a skull, it lives between people. Philosophers use a river image. You can't step into the same river twice. New water flows, but we still name it, build a bridge, track its course. The river's path is formed by banks, bedrock, climate. It shifts with floods and droughts but remains the river. You are like that. Flow is metabolism, banks are body and brain structure, weather is your social world, name is legal identity. The river holds because the forces hold. Back to the ship, sailors replace planks while underway. The ship keeps its route, crew, cargo, log. It bears the same name, flies the same flag, honors the same debts. If someone builds another ship from old planks, which is real? Most say the one that kept sailing with continuous command and record. By that measure, your living body is the ship that kept sailing. Some cases push this further. Split brain surgeries for epilepsy reduced crosstalk between hemispheres, letting each hand sometimes act differently. Yet we still treated the patient as one person, one body, one set of ties. It shows identity blends function, record, relation, not just biology. Think about promise keeping. You tell a friend you'll meet them next year. A year passes, your cells have turned over, you show up, you feel you kept the promise, and they agree. The thread had help, calendar messages, habit of caring about your word. This is how identity works: memory, body, social cues, tools carrying you forward. Flip the scene. You have an injury and can't remember the promise. Your friend meets you with patience. They still see you as you carrying part of your story while you heal. The self is a joint project between organism and community. People say, I want to be my real self. The risk is thinking the real self must be fixed like a statue. The living self keeps shape by changing. Cells swap, skills grow, tastes shift, you drop habits, pick new ones. You're still you when the links run through. In the end, the ship of self is about what we count. Count atoms, and you change by the minute. Count structure and function, and you change by degrees. Count the chain of memory, action and relation, and you hold together as one person. Our world, houses, courts, clinics, families, bets on the chain. It works because bodies change in ways that preserve enough pattern, long enough to matter. The ship sails on, plank by plank. Crew awake at posts, logbook open, name on the hull, course set by a hand that knows where it came from and where it means to go. Each morning you wake and say I, as if it means the same thing it meant yesterday. You answer to your name, you recognize your face in the mirror, and you walk through familiar rooms. Yet the person doing those things is not the same as the one who did them yesterday. You have new memories, slightly different cells, and changes in mood, body chemistry, and thought. The difference is small from day to day, so you do not notice it. Over years, the changes pile up. The child you were is gone. The teenager you were is gone. The version of you from 10 years ago would surprise you now. Still, you treat them all as me. Part of this continuity comes from memory. You carry snapshots of earlier moments. They link to your current life in a chain. You remember where you grew up, what you studied, who you've loved, and what you've lost. These memories make it feel like there is one person behind all of it. But memory is not a perfect recording. Each time you recall an event, you rewrite it slightly. The details can change without your awareness. New experiences reshape the meaning of old ones. You keep the thread by telling yourself the same story, even if the details shift. Personality research shows that traits can change too. People often think they have a fixed temperament, introvert or extrovert, cautious or bold, but studies tracking people over decades show movement. Someone shy in youth may become confident in middle age. Someone restless may grow more steady. Life events push these changes. A demanding job, a long illness, parenthood, loss, even without big events. Slow shifts happen with age. Yet when asked, people still see themselves as having a stable identity. You do not wake each year, asking if you're a different person. You adapt your idea of me to fit the changes. The body's changes are even more constant. Your skin renews, your bones replace minerals, your gut lining sheds and rebuilds, hormone levels rise and fall, the brain rewires connections, strengthens some, prunes others. You live in a body that updates itself like a ship replacing its planks at sea, but the ship keeps its name, keeps sailing its route, and the crew calls it the same vessel. You do the same for yourself. Some change comes from choice. You take a class, pick up a sport, move to a new city. These bring new skills, habits and ways of seeing. At first they feel like additions. Over time they become part of your baseline. You may forget that you were once without them. You meet people who only know the new version and assume you have always been in this way. Other change comes without choice. Accidents, illness or sudden loss can alter you in days. A person who survives danger may carry more caution or more urgency. Someone who loses a loved one may shift their values overnight. These changes can feel like a break in the line of me. You may hear people say, I am not the same person I was before that. They mean that the inner structure, not just the surface, has changed. Relationships play a strong role in shaping the changing me. Others reflect parts of you back to yourself. A friend may see you as brave when you feel unsure. A partner may treat you as thoughtful when you think of yourself as distracted. Over time, their expectations and feedback shift how you act, which then shifts how you see yourself. This is not pretending. It is growth in response to your environment. Change happens in both directions. You affect them, they affect you. Technology adds another layer. Old versions of you are saved in photos, posts, and messages. You can scroll back and see yourself from years ago, speaking in a tone that no longer fits, wearing clothes you would not choose now. You might feel distance from that version, yet you still claim it. You say, "That was me," even if you would not act that way now. The record does not make you the same person. It shows the path of change. One way to think about it is as a pattern. A whirlpool is still the same whirlpool even as new water flows through it. The shape holds while the contents change. Your body and mind keep certain patterns, ways of moving, speaking, deciding, that let you feel continuous. The pattern can evolve slowly enough that you adapt without losing the thread. If it changes quickly, you might feel like a new person, but after a while, even that newness becomes the new me. The law treats you as the same person across change. A contract you sign at 20 binds you at 40. A crime you commit is tied to you decades later, even if your outlook and habits have transformed. Society relies on the idea that there is enough continuity for responsibility to hold. This continuity is a practical tool, not proof of an unchanging self. It works because change is usually gradual, and because records, names, and shared memories keep the link strong. Yet in private thought, you might wonder if the me you feel is more like a story than a fixed thing. You choose which parts of your past to emphasize and which to fade. You frame events in ways that support your current identity. You edit your own history to keep a sense of unity. This is not deception. It is how humans keep moving forward. Too much conflict between past and present selves can cause distress. Integrating change into your story reduces that friction. There is also a rhythm to change. Some years are stable, others feel like upheaval. In stable times, the me feels solid. In upheaval, the me feels in motion. Both states are part of the same process. You might not notice small changes until you look back far enough. 10 years of slow drift can add up to a big shift. Think about a musician learning an instrument. At first, each practice changes skill in noticeable jumps. Later, changes subtle, small refinements in tone or timing. After decades, the way they play may be unrecognizable to their younger self. Yet each step felt natural. Life works like that. You are always adding, losing, refining. The same me is a moving target that stays familiar because it moves with you. Sometimes the gap between past and present is wide enough that you feel two versions exist. People talk about reinventing themselves after a major shift. They change careers, move countries, alter appearance, or end relationships. Outsiders might see it as sudden. From inside, it is often the result of many smaller changes that built up until a break became clear. Even after reinvention, the new self keeps traces of the old, memories, skills, and influences. Children offer a clear example. A child grows into an adult who shares none of the same size, voice, or thought process, but carries the same name and many of the same memories. Adults often say they still feel like the same person inside, even as they recognize that their outlook has shifted. The me adapts to hold both feelings at once. The idea of the same me is a useful fiction. It lets you plan for the future and keep promises. It lets others rely on you. It supports the bonds that make life possible. If you treated every small change as creating a new person, those bonds would snap. Instead, you accept change as part of the same self, like a river that flows but keeps its name. Even knowing you are always changing, you still say I without hesitation. The word points to the current version of you, backed by the history you claim, and shaped by the future you aim for. Tomorrow you will be slightly different again. The pattern will keep shifting, the me will keep moving, and you will keep calling it the same. You carry a picture of yourself. Other people carry theirs. None of these pictures match the person who shows up in real life. You live in the space between them. Your sense of self pulls one way, their expectations pull another. Your behavior lands somewhere in the middle, shifting from scene to scene. This is the role problem. You are not the person you think you are, nor the person others think you are. That's something shaped by both. At breakfast you think of yourself as calm. Your partner thinks you rush. You make coffee, wipe the counter, answer a message. A spill happens. You want to stay calm. They expect you to hurry. You move in a way that is neither pure calm nor pure rush. You reach for a towel while talking, half smile, and choose words with care. That is not just your private self, and not just their version. It is a negotiated self. Social science names these forces. Your self-concept meets role expectations. The meeting point becomes your enacted identity. The looking glass self means you learn who you are by seeing how others react. Impression management is shaping how others see you. Your core still matters, but it is not untouched. At work you believe you are direct. Your team says blunt. You plan to give clear feedback but recall a teammate's note that your tone can cut. You add a question before each point. Your self-concept set the content. Their view shaped the form. The result is a version you would not create alone, and they would not without you. Family shows this even more. At reunions you are the fixer. You may not think of yourself that way, but when the dishwasher breaks, someone hands you a wrench, you become steady. Later, with college friends, you are the artist who stays up late to draw. Both selves are real in context. Neither defines you alone. Romance is its own lab. One partner sees themselves as independent. The other sees them as distant. A busy, talk later, text is a role move, not just a message. It preserves one identity and pushes against the other's view. Over time, the relationship becomes a system shaped by both. Culture adds another layer. In one setting, direct eye contact shows respect. In another, it is rude. If you've lived in both, you shift codes. This is code switching. You are not faking. You are using the range your history allows. Digital life makes this harder to avoid. Social media merges audiences. A post that fits one group confuses another. You write a caption to manage both. The result is a compromised self still part of your public identity. Teachers see it with students. A student who thinks they are bad at math meets a teacher with high expectations. They study harder, and scores rise. This is the Pygmalion effect. Reverse it, and a "you talk too much" label can silence someone who once spoke with ease. The person who shows up is built by the signals they receive. Sports make this visible. On one team you are a role player, on another, the scorer. Same skills, but the coach's system and teammates' needs change your choices. Watch film and you see two different players. Each is you, shaped by different demands. Self-discrepancy theory maps the actual self, the ideal self, and the ought self, the enacted self. The one in action sits where those meet the views of others. In one room the ought dominates, in another the ideal, in another the actual. The mix changes you. The Johari window shows another angle. One pane is what both you and others know. Another is what you know, but they do not. A third is what they see that you do not. The role problem lives in that third pane. If you think clear and they see sharp, you may soften, explain more, or seek rooms where sharp is a strength. A quiet person may see themselves as thoughtful, others as aloof. They start asking one question in each meeting. The label shifts to steady. A loud person may see expressive, others see intense. They pause before speaking. The label shifts to passionate. In both cases, the enacted identity is relational. You can push back with intention. This is agency. You can act from values. Invest in behaviors that signal the role you want. People reflect that role back to you. The feedback loop runs in your favor. This is identity capital. Acts that gain you opportunities aligned with your chosen traits. Conflicting roles create strain. You are a manager and a friend to someone on your team. One role asks for loyalty, the other for fairness. You act as a third version, explaining, setting boundaries, keeping the door open. It hurts, but make space for both roles. Labels can trap or free you. Treat them as fate, and you freeze. Treat them as hypotheses and you can test them. If labeled cautious, you might take small weekly risks and watch how the view changes. Art and play let you try on roles. On stage you may speak first, in a class you may listen. Others respond to that version, and it can follow you into other rooms until it becomes part of your range. Memory shapes this too. The stories you tell about yourself become cues for others. I always crack under pressure, prompts them to handle you gently. I slow down and get clear under pressure, makes them trust you with high stakes. Both can be drawn from the same facts. Technology scales the role problem. Video calls and feeds merge contexts. You may try to keep one brand, but it will not fit all rooms. Range works better. Keep core values steady. Let the surface shift. Share wins it in one place, doubts in another. You cannot escape the in-between. You can learn its rules. You can shape the meeting of your self-concept and others' expectations. You can act clearly, take feedback without losing the core, and choose rooms that bring out parts you want to grow. You can leave rooms that feed versions you do not want to keep. Who you are lives where your inner voice and their voices cross, and it changes as you move. It begins with the fact that you live inside reality and can never step outside it to check if it is real. You can measure and compare parts of it, but all the tools you use come from the same place you are testing. You cannot climb out of the frame to see the whole picture. You can only define reality from within it. So any proof you seek will loop back to where you started. It is like measuring a ruler with itself. You can see the marks line up, but that does not prove they match an outside standard, only that the ruler is consistent with itself. Any concept you use, any law you cite, is part of the reality you are trying to define. You check it against itself, and the answer will always fit the same system it came from. Philosophy calls this a self-referential problem. It shows up in logic, math, and language. The liar paradox is a small example. This sentence is false. If it is true, it is false. If false, it is true. It evaluates itself from inside itself. Asking if reality is real does the same thing. The only evidence we can gather is made of the very stuff in question. Picture someone born in a perfect simulation. Everything they see, hear, and touch comes from the system running it. They study physics, build telescopes, explore their universe. Every measurement matches the rules of the simulation. They could live without ever knowing if anything lies beyond. Even if they suspect, no tool they use would be free of the simulation. We are in the same position. If there is an outside to our reality, any clue we find is still processed from the inside. The brain adds another layer. All perception is mediated. Light hits the eye, signals pass to the brain, and the brain builds a model of the world. You never see photons directly. You see the brain's interpretation. The same holds for sound, touch, taste, and smell. Reality is already a constructed image in the mind. If this model is your only interface, you cannot compare it to an unfiltered version. The loop closes before you even start asking. Science thrives inside the loop. It maps patterns, makes predictions, builds machines that work. GPS satellites, for example, require relativity to stay accurate, and when we apply it, the maps line up. This shows the model is effective, but effectiveness is not proof of ultimate reality. A video game character could discover that gravity in their world always acts the same and build devices to use it. That would not prove the game's world is real, in any deeper sense, only that its rules are consistent. Dreams offer a smaller version of the loop. Inside a dream, feelings feel real until you wake. You can run, taste, and reason about the dream's physics, but that logic has no reach beyond it. When you wake, you see the dream's world was a subset of a larger one. In waking life, there is no confirmed larger state to wake into. We could already be in the equivalent of a dream without an alarm to prove it. Language makes the loop tighter. Every definition is built with other words, which are defined by still more words. A dictionary is a web of cross-references. There is no word outside the system to anchor the rest. Reality works the same way for knowledge. Every fact depends on other facts, all inside the same frame. There is no external dictionary to check. Some philosophers try to break the loop by finding something undeniable. Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am." Doubting your own existence still requires someone to do the doubting. That might give certainty about the I. But the rest of reality remains in the loop. You can be sure you exist in some form, but not of the nature of the place you exist in. Others suggest coherence is enough. If a system explains all observations without contradiction, we can treat it as real. Pilots trust instruments because they keep planes in the air, not because they can prove the laws of physics exist outside perception. But coherence is still internal proof. It depends on the logic and experience we already accept. Think of a mirror maze. Every reflection is consistent with the others. You can navigate by them, but all the images come from within the same hall of mirrors. From inside, you cannot tell how the building looks from outside, or if there even is an outside. Defining reality from within itself works the same way. The loop appears in mathematics too. Gödel's incompleteness theorems show that any formal system complex enough for arithmetic will contain truths it cannot prove within itself. No system can be both complete and self-verifying. To prove everything, you'd need to step outside. But if reality is the only system we have, there is no such step. The simulation argument uses the loop as part of its case. If we can create simulations indistinguishable from reality, odds suggest we might already be in one. But even if true, the outside running it would still have its own reality loop. The question just moves up a level. You still cannot step outside all of it. Try a thought exercise. Suppose you receive flawless proof you are in a simulation, math, physics, and direct evidence, and you believe it. But the proof is still part of the simulation. The rules you trust, the senses you use, the belief you form. They all come from inside. You have learned something about the structure, but you still have no view from outside it. Religious and metaphysical claims face the same limit. If someone says reality is created by a higher being, the claim is still processed through your mind, using categories you already have. The idea of a creator, the meaning of existence, the notion of cause, all are formed within the same reality you question. Whether the claim is true or false, it cannot escape the loop. Some turn to direct experience to try to break it. Meditation or psychedelics can change how reality feels. People report that the self dissolves or the world feels less solid. But these are still experiences happening inside consciousness. They may suggest there is more to reality, but they remain within it. Even skepticism depends on the loop. To doubt reality, you rely on reasoning and evidence, products of the reality you doubt. It is like pulling on a rope to test if the rope exists. You can feel tension or slack, but you are still holding it. In daily life, the loop causes no trouble. You act as if the world is real, because it behaves consistently. You avoid fire, eat when hungry, move when threatened. The rules hold, so you use them. The loop becomes visible only when you try to anchor reality to something outside it. That anchor never appears. The closest you can come is to see the loop itself. Every definition, proof, or explanation of reality is made of the same material as reality. The question, is this real, has nowhere outside to land. Once you see that, you understand why the loop never breaks, because there is no place beyond it to pull from. Imagine you could live forever. No aging, no clock on your last day. You wake, you work, you rest, you repeat for centuries. At first, the idea feels like a gift. You could learn every craft. You could see every place. You could love without fear of a final goodbye. Then a quiet doubt appears. If there is no end, do your choices still matter in the same way? Does meaning survive when time has no edge? Endings give shape to life. A deadline turns a plan into action. A last day of summer makes a swim sweet. A song needs a final note, or the phrase never resolves. Limits force trade-offs. Trade-offs reveal what you value. The press of time says, choose this, not that. Without that press you can drift. You can say, I will do it later, and later never ends. Think about a student with no due dates. The paper can always be better. New sources keep piling up. The student edits for years and never turns it in. The work grows, but the act of sharing never occurs. In the same way, an immortal life can slide into endless prep. You rehearse the speech forever. You never speak. The brain has its own rules about pleasure and time. It adapts. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. The first time you visit a new city, every street glows. By the 10th visit, you check your phone at the cafe. With infinite days, novelty can go flat. You might push for more extreme thrills to feel the same spark, or you grow numb. Pleasure still exists, but it asks for contrast. Rest feels deep after effort. Warmth is rich after cold. When every day can give you anything, contrast can fade. Memory is another limit. You cannot store every hour of an endless life. The brain compresses, edits, and forgets. Old scenes blur, new layers cover them. Over long spans you might not feel like a single stream. You become a chain of selves that only partly overlap. Meaning often rests on a story. I am the one who did this and learned that. A story needs arcs. It needs chapters. If memory frays your sense of one continuous I can fray with it. Identity shifts even if memory holds. Values change with context and age. A builder in one century can become a monk in the next. A monk can turn into a scientist, then a parent, then a wanderer. Each version wants different things. If you live long enough, you might oppose your younger self on core beliefs. Which self sets your purpose? A life without an end can feel like a series of lives with no final word to tie them. Relationships set a hard test. If only you were immortal, grief becomes a habit. You make friends. You fall in love. Time takes them. You start again. Some people would keep a soft heart and choose love anyway. Others would shield themselves and float above ties. Distance protects you, but it also drains meaning, because meaning often grows from bonds and promises. If everyone is immortal, the shape changes, but the problem stays. A vow till death do us part loses force when death does not come. People might shorten vows into errors. Couples could choose for the next 50 years. A citizen might serve a century in one field, then leave. Many choices become reversible. When every choice is reversible, commitment can weaken. You can always switch later. You can delay the hard parts of growth because there is no clock to force the turn. Risk gives life flavor because it raises stakes. If you cannot die, what counts as risk? You can still lose trust. You can still waste decades. You can damage places and people. You can cause harm that you must face for a very long time. Maybe that makes ethics heavier, not lighter. An immortal polluter sits with the mess they made. An immortal leader lives with the fallout of each decision. Compounding works on care and on harm. The long run arrives and then keeps arriving. Work and craft show both sides. An immortal artist can master every form. They can learn violin for 100 years, then sculpture for 200 more. The danger is perfectionism. Without a finish line, you can hold your art back for more edits. Release takes courage in any life. An endless life asks for more of it, because the temptation to wait is strong. A simple rule helps: publish on a date, not when it feels done. Create seasons. Close the season. Start the next. You can see the same pattern in travel. You could visit every country. If you can go everywhere, a single trip can lose weight. To keep awe alive, set frames. Walk one river from source to sea. Trace one language across borders. Plant a tree in each place and return to see it grow. Meaning deepens when a path has a rule you choose and keep. Curiosity is a real rescue. The world is bottomless in detail. Each field holds subfields. Each craft has layers. You can spend 50 years in medicine and still find a question you have not touched. You can spend 50 years in poetry and still find a line you have not heard. If you live forever, you can also teach. Teaching renews wonder. A student's first insight can light up your 100th year in a topic. You do not need an end to feel purpose if you stand in that exchange. There is also service. Some work takes longer than one mortal life. Restoring a watershed, rewilding a desert, tracing a cure, healing a region after war. These are projects measured in centuries. An immortal person can hold the thread. Others would drop by force of time. They can be a steward, not just a visitor. Stewardship gives meaning through care, repetition, and patience. The act is not grand each day. The line across time is grand. You still need limits. Games need rules to be fun. Life can be played the same way. You can choose constraints that create stakes. You can set vows that bind you for a span. You can fast from ease to feel joy return. You can practice Sabbath. You can keep a craft that uses simple tools when machines could do it faster. Chosen limits do not shrink life. They frame it. Tools can help with memory so that arcs stay clear. Keep a log. Keep letters. Keep art from each era in a small box and pass the box to your later self with a note. Mark transitions with rituals. Hold awake for the end of a century in your life and invite the people who knew that version of you. Share stories. The past stays nearer when you handle it with your hands. Then new meaning can grow on top without breaking the base. Community matters more, not less. You will meet people who live short lives, even if you do not. Sit with them in grief. Celebrate small wins with them. Let their timelines touch yours. Their urgency can teach you when your own fades. You can offer patience when theirs runs out. The exchange keeps both of you human. Economics has a term that fits here: discount rate. Most of us value today more than tomorrow. We trade a little future for a little now. If you live forever, you might set a lower discount rate. You can plant slow trees. You can learn slow arts. You can give slow help, but you can also fall into a trap. I will start later because I have time. The cure is the same as for any procrastination. Start small. Make the first move today. Meaning likes momentum. There is still danger with no end. Apathy can spread. You can float, repeat, and go gray inside. The answer is not permanent thrill. It is challenge. Add weight to the bar. Learn a form you fear. Make a promise that asks for a stretch. Help where thanks will never reach you. The struggle is not a bug. It is part of how meaning forms. Art points to this. A canvas means more because you choose its size. A poem means more because you choose its meter. A life can work like that. You choose spans and shapes. You name an era and live inside it. Then you close it and start a new one. There is also the body. If you are ageless but not invincible, you still need to care for the one body you have. Training, rest, food, and sun matter. If you plan to use the same muscles for 1,000 years, care builds gratitude. Gratitude keeps meaning warm. Some people ask for the right to end their own life, even in a world with natural death. That shows how much agency matters. In an immortal world, agency would matter even more. If you cannot die by age, you may still need exits from chapters. You would need ways to step back from roles, to end duties well, and to pass the torch. A clean ending to a role lets someone else begin. Meaning also lives in that handoff. Children teach another lesson. Meaning does not need size. It needs attention, love, and repair. A bedtime story holds more life than a medal, if you are present for it. An immortal person can forget this and chase only big arcs. A small daily act can keep the heart in tune for the long arcs. You might fear that forever would empty your days. It could, if you expect time to give you meaning. Time does not do that. Choice does. Limits do. Work does. Love does. The end on the horizon helps, but it is not the only way. A life can gain shape from seasons you choose, from bonds you honor, and from tasks that outlast you, even if you do not end. You ask if non-existence exists in some way, because we can talk about it, picture it, and reason with it. The word sits on the tongue with ease. The idea sits in the mind with force. You can imagine nothing in a box, or a world without you in it. If the concept is so clear, what kind of being does it have? To answer, We need to sort the ways a thing can be said to exist. We use one word for many different kinds of presence. Start with the simplest case. The concept exists in your mind as a pattern. Neurons fire. Synapses pass signals. You draw a little circle and label it nothing. That picture has a footprint in your brain. So the concept exists as a mental state. It exists the way a plan exists before you act. It exists the way a melody exists when you hum it without sound. The content of the thought is non-existence. But the thought itself is a real event in a real organ. Now step to language. Nothing is a word. You can define it, teach it, and translate it. Dictionaries give it entries. Sentences use it to do work. Language is part of the world. It is made of breath, ink, pixels, or muscle memory on a keyboard. So the term for non-existence exists as a mark, a sound in the tool within grammar. It is not empty in that sense. It shows up and does work. But that does not settle the question. When you say there is nothing in the box, you are not pointing to a thing called nothing. You are reporting an absence. An absence is not an object you can lift. It is a way the world is arranged. The box lacks coins, marbles, or air. The lack is real in a thin sense. You can act on it. You can fill the box. You can weigh it and record the value. The absence guides action and guides speech. Yet it does not float around as a freestanding item. We treat many absences as real enough to matter. The absence of oxygen can kill a person. The absence of a guard can let a theft occur. A doctor notes a deficit. A lawyer argues an omission. In each case, the not state has effects. Causation often includes gaps. The stove not being off can burn a house. The driver not stopping can cause a crash. We do not need a positive object named non-existence to explain these. We need the world plus a missing piece. The pattern world minus X can bring about events and can carry blame. Everyday life gives us handy models. A hole is not stuff. It is where stuff is not. A hole in the ground changes how you walk. A hole in a pipe changes pressure and flow. You can measure the hole by depth and width, but you cannot hold the hole apart from the soil that frames it. It depends on its host. A shadow works the same way. It is the absence of light in a shape. It cools the skin. It moves with the salt. It lacks substance. Yet you plan your day around it on a hot afternoon. Non-existence shows up like that, bound to something else, making a difference through lack. Philosophy uses a few bits of jargon for this. One is ontology, the talk about what there is. Another is intentionality, the way thoughts are about things. You can think about a unicorn even though there are no unicorns. The thought exists, its object does not. This is a case of intentional inexistence. The mind holds a directed state without a matching thing outside. We do this with the past and the future as well. You can picture last winter's snow or next year's trip. Those scenes are not present, but the mind can still carry them and act on them. Logic and math give non-existence a formal home. Negation says not P. The statement unicorns do not exist can be true. What makes it true is not a strange object called non-unicorn. It is a world that contains none. In math, 0 is a number that marks the absence of quantity. You can add it, subtract it, and build whole systems with it. It acts like a thing inside the rules, yet it stands for nothing in the count. The empty set is a set with no members. It has properties. It is unique. It sits at the base of number theory. Both 0 and the empty set show how the idea of none can be handled with care and power without turning it into a lump of stuff. Computing lives on these ideas. A null pointer refers to no location. A 0-length file holds no bytes. A 404 marks that a resource is not found. These states shape behavior. Programs branch on them. Servers send them across the world. The nothing in code is not mystical. It is a defined lack that carries signals and changes outcomes. Physics adds texture. When a physicist says vacuum, they mean no particles in a region. Yet fields remain. Vacuum has structure. It can fluctuate. It has energy in some models. This tells us that nothing in physics is a technical state, not absolute non-being. If you try to imagine a deeper kind of nothing, no space, no time, no fields, no laws, you hit a wall. Our tools for description live inside the world. They strain when we try to push them past the world. Old ideas help too. Think of privation, a word from ancient thought. A privation is a lack of a good that ought to be there for a thing to be complete. Blindness is a privation of sight in a creature built for sight. Darkness is a privation of light in a place where light could be. We still speak that way. We say a system has a deficiency. We say a child has a scarcity of food. We do not hunt for a ghost named scarcity. We fix the conditions so that what is missing can arrive. Language tricks us into reifying nothing. Nothing is in the fridge, looks like a subject and a verb. Grammars push us to treat nothing like a noun. Then we ask if that noun exists. A better paraphrase is there is no food in the fridge. The sentence does not add a spooky object. It denies the presence of the usual items. Clarity in speech uncovers clarity in thought. We also use nothing to mark the ground of choice. A designer stares at a blank page. The page is not a thing called nothing. It is a surface without marks. The absence is fruitful. It invites marks. Negative space in art shapes composition. Silence shapes music. Rest bars build rhythm. The gaps carry meaning because they sit inside a frame of possible sounds and lines. The non-existent note has force relative to what could have been played. Social life treats absences as facts that matter. A promise not kept is an absence that bites. A parent not present leaves a trace in a life. We give names to these voids and work to fill them. The names help us coordinate. The voids are not entities on their own. They are holes in a fabric we share. This leads to a helpful split. There is existence in the world as an object among objects. There is existence as a pattern or state of affairs. There is existence as a concept in minds and as a mark in language. Non-existence does not exist as a chunk of world stuff. It does exist as a state the world can be in, as a role in our reasoning, and as a cause when the lack sits in the right place in a chain. You can say it this way: nothing does not exist, but there being nothing here can still be true, and can still matter. Examples keep it clean. You reach for your keys and your hand closes on air. The absence sends you back through each room. It makes you late. You remember leaving them at the cafe. The empty hook caused a change in your route. No ghost did that. The layout of the world minus keys did it. Or think of a goalkeeper who steps left because a striker does not move right. The lack of motion carries information. The keeper reads the absence, and that reading wins a match. We also build with planned absences. A lattice is strong because it has holes. A flute sings because it has holes. A flute sings because it has holes. A city grid breathes because it reserves space for parks. You can write a law that forbids a practice, and by that absence of permission protect many people. These are forms where lack is part of the design. We do not treat the lack like a second thing. We treat it like a chosen pattern that shapes the whole. When we argue about nothing, we often carry mixed senses. One person means a sensory blank, and another means a total lack of being. A third means a clean slate. The word range is wide. When we pin down which job we want it to do, the fog lifts. If the job is to say the box is empty, the word works. If the job is to say there is a strange entity called nothing that exists, the word misleads. You can test your own sense with a short drill. Sit in a quiet room and switch off the lights. You will still hear the air. You will still feel your heartbeat. You will never meet pure nothing by killing stimulus. You meet low input. If you try to imagine a world where there is no world, you use space in your mind to host the image. The canvas is your own brain. The thought exists, and its content is no things, but the thought uses a thing to appear. Non-existence then lives as a tool that marks gaps, a state that systems can be in, a value in math that keeps accounts straight, and a word that helps us deny. It does not crowd the universe with a new kind of item. It rides on what already is, and carves shapes in it. That is enough for action, and enough for truth. Start with a plain scene. You open a box, look inside, and find no coin. You say, there is nothing in the box. You did not find an object called nothing. You reported an absence. The sentence points to the box and denies that any coin, bill, or token is among its contents. The puzzle begins when we treat nothing as a name and then ask where that named thing exists. Language lets us talk about what is not there. We say, the room is empty, or there are no apples left. These lines do not add new entities. They remove candidates. Logic makes this clear. There are no apples in the bowl. Rewrites, as for everything in the bowl, that thing is not an apple. The word nothing helps us negate and quantify. It is not a label for a strange object. Consider, nothing is heavier than lead. It sounds like a claim about a giant called nothing. Read it as, no thing is heavier than lead. Grammar tempts us to treat nothing as a subject. Logic shows it functions like no, plus a silent thing. A harder case is negative existence claims. Pegasus does not exist. Looks like it refers to Pegasus. If there is no target, what is the sentence about? One answer, tied to Russell, treats the name as a hidden description. There is no winged horse owned by Bellerophon. The sentence denies that any creature meets a set of traits. We do not need a ghostly horse to make the claim meaningful. Think about holes. A donut has a hole. Is the hole a thing? We can measure it and name it. Yet it is an absence with a shape. We talk as if it were an object, because it helps us track the pastry. The same holds for shadows, silences, and gaps. You can hear a pause in music. You can stand in the shade. You can frame an empty space. Absences guide action without becoming items in our inventory. Math sharpens the idea. The empty set has no members. We prove facts with it. The number 0 marks a count of none. 0 and the empty set exist inside a formal system. They are not marbles in a jar. They codify the way we talk about lack and let us calculate with it. When you owe nothing, your account shows 0. The ledger states an absence in a precise way. Physics adds a twist. People say the universe came from nothing, that nothing in modern physics is not a bare void. A vacuum stated in field theory is the lowest energy arrangement of fields spread across space. It has structure and can fluctuate. Brief particle pairs can appear and vanish. That is not nothing in the strict sense of no space, no time, no laws. It is a special something. If you want strict nothing, physics stays silent because its tools presuppose a framework. We also use nothing to mark value rather than being. This trophy means nothing to me now. The speaker does not deny the trophy exists. They deny that it matters. One word, different roles. In each role we face a gap, in contents, in number, in rules, or in care. A key tool is the use mentioned split. Nothing is in the box uses the word to deny contents. The word nothing has 7 letters, mentions the word. The second line talks about ink and sound, not about absence. This explains why we can discuss nothing without turning it into a thing. Often we are talking about talk. A common pushback says, but you are still talking about something. Meet it with a map of levels. At level 1 we talk about chairs, trees, and coins. At level 2, we talk about our talk. We use words like nothing, and not, and if to build claims. These tools belong to level 2. They help us manage level 1. When we speak about nothing, we work at level 2. Computer science makes this concrete with null values. A variable can hold a number, or it can hold null, which means no number is stored. Null is a marker for lack. The marker is a value in the machine, but it does not conjure the missing record. It lets the program branch. If value do this, if null do that. We use the marker to test and debug. We do not mistake it for a hidden object. Now try a few everyday cases. You open your wallet and see only receipts. I have nothing. You tell a friend who asked for cash. You mean I have no money with me. You scan a shelf for a book and fail. Nothing by that author. You tell the clerk. You mean no copy meets the search. The phrase is short and keeps the focus on the aim. Could there have been nothing at all? We can form the words, but the idea strains. To say there could have been nothing, we use modal terms like could be and possible world. Those terms come from a system for comparing ways things might be. If you remove all things, you may also remove that system. The thought risks cancelling itself, yet the exercise still teaches. Our grip on nothing rests on contrast. We learn the meaning by seeing what the word removes. Scope matters. A stage goes dark between scenes. We say nothing is happening, while crew members change sets. The line filters out backstage work. At the scale of the story, nothing occurs. At the scale of the building, much occurs. Without a clear scope, nothing lacks a target and turns slippery. We can now say how the word does its work. Nothing plays several roles. It acts as a quantifier that denies instances. It names an empty set and a count of 0 inside math. It marks a null in code. It sets thresholds of interest in speech. In each role, it helps us manage gaps. The gaps are real features of our plans, rules, and measures. Talking about them does not turn them into objects. It lets us steer action and inference with care. A simple habit helps. When you hear or say nothing, ask what domain is in play. Space in a box, members of a set, particles in a field mode, items in a store, values in a database, meanings in a life. Once the domain is clear, the paradox fades. You see that nothing is not a rival to something. It is the sign we use at the boundary where things stop, a clean mark that says, here the count ends, here the list runs out, here the light fades to black.